Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. Hello, everyone. This is Robyne. Welcome to our conversation today about all things stress. Now, I am so appreciative that you are here for these conversations. And I feel kind of like even awkward saying conversations because obviously it's very one-sided. But I want to encourage you to please reach out. If you have any wonderments or curiosities, please feel free to reach out. I love to be able to answer your questions. So again, we'll make this more of a conversation by you participating. Let me know what your thoughts are, how I could best show up for you. It would be awesome to hear from you. Okay, so that makes it a conversation, and Apollo's out. If you're watching this, you would just see that Apollo, my fearless little buddy, he just parted ways. But okay, for those who are listening, you can just trust me, Apollo left. Okay, moving on. So last day I talked about the 5 pillars, right? So the theory of everyday resiliency talks about these 5 pillars. And one of the things that I wanted to do for kind of our next little bit of a wee while is talk about some of the barriers. Now, I think what's so often the case is that folks notice that their resiliency ebbs and flows. Like some days you might feel really brave and bold, and you can show up in those big parts of your life that require that extra effort or attention or focus. And other days, we don't feel like being very resilient. We feel like maybe we can't even find it or access it. First and foremost, I just want to hold space to say resiliency is not fixed. It ebbs and flows. It moves back and forth depending on the day, depending on the type of situation you're in. You might have noticed that you are, like, for example, wildly resilient when it comes to work things, that you can have setbacks at work, but you know how to build a comeback. You can like recalculate, you recalibrate, you refocus, you get back in, and it doesn't hold you back. On work fronts, you are so resilient at achievement or performance. However, perhaps in your personal life, you might notice relationships might be an area where there's some growth needed. Like relationships and like dealing with emotions might require more of your capacity to develop the skill sets and use those tools and practices to help us so we can be more emotionally resilient. So again, it's not just like we get these badges that say, oh, look, she's resilient. So that means she's resilient in every single life area. Absolutely not. Our lived experience is going to set us up for success, or perhaps things that haven't been processed might hinder different areas of our life. So again, let's just kind of map this out. Perhaps you're really resilient in physical, right? Like you can take a hit, you can experience discomfort, pain, and you're relatively okay with it. There's that kind of old adage about like the man cold, right? Like where it's like for some reason, again, I know that's not always the case, but for some kind of way where like if a mama's sick and still doing a lot of that invisible labor. It seems sometimes if other parent is sick, if that's a situation, that sometimes it like absolves them from any responsibility to continue moving the household forward. Now, that's not the case in every family. I totally get that. But what I'm trying to use as just an example is that there are some areas where we're like forced to be more resilient than perhaps we even want to be because of circumstance. I recently heard a comedian talk about like in like double parent households, how like there's always a predominant parent and then there's like a backup parent. And that you probably hear this when people talk, for example, of things like, oh, like that person's babysitting their kids. If that's your child, you are not babysitting, you're providing care as we're supposed to. But the comedian made a comment where he said, mamas in so many cases are like the star quarterback, and like, but there is a second quarterback, right? There's a backup quarterback, and they in this example, the comedian said that like dads in a lot of cases are the backup quarterback. It's like they're there, and like sometimes they get called into the game, but when they do, everybody gets really nervous. Or perhaps they like shine, but in more cases than not, we get a wee bit nervous. But again, hold space to recognize even our greatest quarterbacks at one point were likely backup quarterbacks to somebody. So I think we all have elements of greatness, but okay, I digress. Back on track. The idea is that resiliency looks different in different places and spaces. And the big idea I want to share with you is to share some of the specific barriers that I've come across in my research that really feel as though they impact a person's ability to show up. And again, it varies. Situations are all different. However, these are some common traits that we see. Now, the first one I want to tell you about, and we're going to dive so deep into this in our time together as we progress, but to get us started, it's the idea of stress. When we are tapped out, okay, which means our bodies are full of cortisol and we're running on adrenaline, and we are in that place of what we talk about in my research as distress, which means the doses of cortisol that are in our body on a daily basis are putting us to the point where we cross this threshold where we don't feel as capable. Okay. We don't feel as resourced because our body is stretched too thin, right? Our body is so busy trying to manage its survival system, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawning system, that it's not worried about all the other stuff. It's just trying to keep you alive. So we call that the place of distress. Now, another little point to make here is there is no such thing as good stress or bad stress. From a chemical perspective, like the hormone perspective, our brains and our bodies can't differentiate if the cortisol is released because we have like this big, exciting event that we're doing, or perhaps a wedding in the future, or even, for example, like a first date. And like it can't differentiate like things that could be perceived as positive versus you being chased by a bear. Okay. It's the exact same hormone system. It's the exact same nervous system. It can't be like, oh, look at this cortisol molecule. This totally is a good one. Oh, this one, this is she ran into her ex-boyfriend. No, it's all the same, which I think is so important because I get so nervous when people say like, oh, it's a good stress. It's like, it's how we process it that makes the difference. And what might be perceived as, quote, this good stress to someone, to somebody else, it could be super harmful. So this notion of like it being moral, like good or bad, I think really needs to have a reckoning. It's this idea of the doses of stress, the doses of cortisol that we get on a daily basis. So imagine your body is like full of this cortisol. Are you getting full of cortisol when you're experiencing stressors? Because it's your body's way of calling you into action. It wants you to do something, get out of this situation. And then this is very important. Our body has a reaction. We don't get to pick how our body chemically will respond. Okay, I'm going to say that again. We don't get to pick if our body activates fight, flight, freezing, or fawning. It is a reflex. It's the same as if somebody throws something at your face, you are going to close your eyes. It is an absolute reflex. Now, where we do have agency is what we do once we have been activated. Okay. So I hear people all the time saying, like, oh my gosh, Robyne, I fawn, which means fawning is like this one that I think a lot of women especially are groomed to experience more. And I think it actually manipulates how we experiences, how helpful, Robyne, how we like show up, because our reflexes and these kind of reactions, there is a component of learned behavior within it. Okay. Your body's going to learn very quickly what serves you well and what doesn't serve you well. And it's going to use what serves you well more frequently. Okay, so fawning is your body perceives a stressor. Let's say your boss is an absolute horrible human. And as soon as they say something to you, you literally feel as though your body just shuts right down. Okay, like you shut right down and you're like, sure, no problem. Like, hey, can you work this weekend? Yep, no problem. You know, you can't work this week and you have other commitments, but you just say yes, even though you absolutely want to say no. My favorite fawning example was when a former colleague reached out and she's like, okay, Robyne, I need your help. I want to quit my job. Okay, first of all, I had no idea how much I love helping people quit their jobs. I love helping people find their second summit, which is like, okay, great. You made it to this top point. You feel like maybe that's the end game, but all of a sudden you're no, no, no. There's a whole other story left to be written. And people leave those, like, really, in a lot of cases, these like dream jobs to go find these new jobs. I love supporting people going into big, bold futures. Okay, I get back on point. So the woman said to me, help me quit my job. So we chatted about it. I helped her kind of like how to phrase some key pieces of information for her exit interview the next day with HR. And after that experience, like after her HR interview, I called her, right? I had a little timer set on my phone. I knew exactly when she'd be walking to the parking lot. And I was like, okay, I got you. Tell me, how did it go? I'm here for your update. And you can give me the long update. I'm here for you. And she's like, well, she said, I told the HR team how this job was impacting my mental health, how it's impacting my family, that it's not sustainable. And she actually used the language, it is beyond human limits of what you're asking me to do. It isn't even reasonable. So again, maybe I coached her on that because there's lots of research that talks about stressors being beyond human limits. Okay, so I'm like, great. What happened next? And then there was this pause, and she said, I accepted promotion. And I'm like, whoa, back it up. That was not the assignment. And she even said in that moment, when her words were like, yes, I will accept this promotion, she said, like, like, brain, whose team are you on? Like, why did I just say yes to this? I literally just told them I cannot do this, yet my reaction was to say yes. That's a fawning response. We just want to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, even though, like, the aftermath of getting ourselves out of that situation that we just agreed to is going to be even harder. We say it. So that's a fawning response. All right. So this is what is so key, my friends. We don't get to pick if we like throw the table, if we run out of the room, if we shut down, or if we just freeze and we're like deer in headlight, or what also could be known as teenager with headphones and a hoodie on, right? Where we're just like stopped. What we know about that is your body is having this reflex. And then the question is, what do we do about it? And so often when folks aren't feeling particularly resilient, it might be that they're having this like bit of a little bit of a tension between how their body is responding, how their body is reacting to what's happening. So the first kind of idea in terms of what do we do about that is that we want to regulate that nervous system as quickly as possible. The two kind of quick takeaways, if our system is highly activated, we want to use our breath. Okay. Because the breath is the quickest biohack to send information to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the like, you're going to be okay system, to basically get the sympathetic nervous system to calm the F down. Okay. So we got to get back into control from that reflex. Breath work is going to do it. Number one, 2 sharp inhales through your nose and 1 slow exhale. Okay. What that's going to do is send a cue up that polyvagal nerve that says you are safe. Like, get it together. Okay. So 2 sharp inhales and then a slow, steady, strong exhalation. And do a couple of those until you are back into that frontal cortex part of your brain that says, okay, I'm back in charge. What are we going to do next? Another one you can, oh, side little note, you might notice like babies do this right before they like unleash, where they do those 2 big inhalations and then all of a sudden they like let that go. It's soothing their nervous system. Now, a baby crying, you might wonder, how is that soothing their nervous system? Well, especially for us mamas, we are hardwired to find the sound of a baby uncomfortable, distressing, even if it's not even our own baby. And so that means the louder that baby wails, the more likely someone's going to scoop them up. So that strategy gets paired. That big cry is likely going to get something to soothe them. We're going to pick up that screaming baby and we're going to let bounce. We're going to shush. We're going to like do those kind of motions. I love that you're probably listening to this and I'm like bouncing a baby. You might see it if you're watching it online. Anyway, That's what we're going to do. We're going to soothe the nervous system. Two deep inhalations, one slow exhalation. Number two, we can do, if this is just slightly more advanced, this is what we would call like a birthday cake breath, where you like bring your imagination to it. Okay. So imagine a birthday cake in your mind's eye. You don't even have to close your eyes. Just imagine a birthday cake. Take a deep breath in and then blow out your birthday candles. I encourage you, wherever you are, let's do that together, right? Just take a deep breath in, imagine your birthday cake, whatever you want that cake to look like, and exhale. Isn't it remarkable how we forget to like breathe sometimes, even though it's like life? Oh, I remember one time I was doing birthday cake breathing, and one of the kiddos walked in the kitchen and they were like, "Oh my gosh, mom, are you birthday cake breathing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit wobbly. I'm using my birthday cake breath to kind of bring myself back to center." And then all of a sudden I heard this like little giggling, laughing, and I opened my eyes and I looked over and I'm like, "What?" And Jack said, "Mama, I'm so sorry. I just can't get over how many candles are on your birthday cake." He's like, "Wow, yeah, our children are our greatest teachers." Okay, so when that system, that nervous system is activated, okay, we want to bring ourselves back to that place where we have the most agency and control. This is another really interesting point that I find wildly helpful. When we are in like this activated state, distress, and that sympathetic nervous system is all fired up, right? So that's the fighting, the flight, the freezing, the fawning. One of the things that's really helpful to remember is that there is emotion smacked in there too. Okay. So it might feel like rage, fear, anger, jealousy. It might feel like just like sheer like overwhelm, whatever that is. Now, this is so helpful. I love this piece of information. It's given me so many moments of just perspective. Emotions last on average about 90 seconds. Okay. Even like the big ones when it's a reaction. Okay. About 90 seconds. This does not, this doesn't include things like grief. Okay. That's a whole other, not like a whole other system. And we'll talk about that another day. We're just talking about those like that feeling of wow, rage, anger, or even just big fear. 90 seconds. So if we just try our best to be like, even count it through, right? Just like hold on to it. Don't try to ignore it. Don't try to eliminate the emotion. Don't try to do anything to get rid of it other than just like feel it. Be present for the emotion. It's like, wow, I notice I'm feeling so ragey right now. Or I notice I feel so scared. I feel it really big. Notice that. You might also be mindful of your language. Instead of saying, I am scared, I am anxious. I am afraid. I notice I feel afraid. You're already starting to get a little bit more of that spaciousness needed to address it. I notice I'm feeling ragey. I notice I'm jealous. I notice I'm super not okay. Okay. I'm going to sit with it for a good 90 seconds. My friends, when we actually show up for our emotions and hold space and we see that they dissipate within those 90 seconds. It is remarkable how much more agency that we have. There's some research that argues big repressed emotions, 7 years. They can linger and live in the nervous system 7 years if we repress it. That's why, for example, the book The Body Keeps the Score is such an amazing resource for people who are really curious about learning more about like deep trauma. And I also think that there's so much amazing information out there about why, let's say, for example, women in our hips, right? This is why the pigeon pose in yoga is such it's a goodie, but like one that you have a love-hate relationship with, because we know that there's just so much stored. And there is more that we don't know about the mysteries of emotion in the human body than I think that there is stuff that we know about. And some of these wise older practices, I think there's so much for us to learn. So get this. This emotion is going to linger for about 90 seconds. Or if I bottle it up and I pent it up, it could be there for a very, very long time. Hold that space. And then the question is, what do I need in this moment? Or what matters most in this moment? What do I have? What's my next right move? You don't have to figure out it all. You just have to figure out what's the best thing that you can do in that moment that minimizes the blast radius. Because the idea when we're experiencing this big reaction is we don't want to make it worse. Now, the other part we're going to talk about, and as we progress in this time together, is the fact that when we're in that place of distress and our bodies are just chock full of cortisol, my friends, we're not making good choices because, again, our brain isn't interested in all like the right food choices or all the stuff that we know are super pro social. It's literally, I will do whatever it takes to survive. Okay. So, stress, my friends, is one of the biggest barriers to why our capacity for resiliency moves so much. And also those different areas in which certain things are more stressful than others speaks to why we might feel resilient in some places, but not in other situations. Okay, we have just like literally, we haven't even scratched the surface. We like tapped on it. My friends, I wrote a whole book on this. We have so much more to discuss. I hope there was a gem or two in there that could serve you today. And if so, please leave a comment. Let me know what type of information that you want to learn more about. And my big ask, if you can do me a favor and like and review this, and also more importantly, please share it with someone you think that this could help. I think part of us sharing good information with the people that we love, the people we care about, is a great way to show up. So thanks for showing up for me today. I try my best to show up for you. Take good care, and I will see you just around the corner. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.